Welcome my good smelling friends, Ify here with a special video. Why do I think this video is special? Because I'm not just going to show you fragrances and tell you this is good, this is bad. No, this is more like me giving you advice and hopefully setting you on a path which will be the best according to your desires when it comes to fragrances. I think that it's more important that from time to time I'm going to give you this kind of advices which are, in my opinion, more useful than continuously feeding you fragrances, showing you fragrances and telling you this is good, this is bad, and then you're deciding which one is good. This I'm going to give you like an overall look into fragrances, and especially if you are new into perfumes, it will help you decide which way should you go starting from now. When it comes to fragrances, for me at least, there are three main types. There are the cheap ones, which are made out of cheap perfumes, which are ones that are smelling good, others that are smelling bad. There are the Middle Eastern fragrances, which are mainly clones, which are probably you are all aware of. And of course there are some genuine cheap smelling fragrances which are considered hidden gems. Those are the good ones. Then we move on to designer fragrances, which again you probably all know about them. You can find them in almost every fragrance shop. And then we have like the high tier, we have the niche fragrances, and of course in here when I'm talking about niche fragrances, I'm also including indie brands, which are like smaller individual brands but mainly focused on producing fragrances. So in which of these branches should you look into? If you are not yet decided on which path should you take, hear me out. I'm going to try to make it as simple as possible. If you are a guy that only likes to smell good, he doesn't care about brands or anything niche like stuff like that, and he doesn't want to spend too much on his fragrances, then I highly recommend looking into, of course, cheap fragrances. For example, this is a cheap fragrance, Antonio Puig Quorum. This is one of those hidden gems in my opinion, and this is the kind of fragrances you should look into. I know I said I'm not going to show you fragrances, but these are just for example, okay? I'm not telling you that you should buy these exact fragrances. And of course, if you don't mind wearing clones but like smelling like niche fragrances, you should definitely check out the clones. These can make you smell very good for very cheap and get you the compliments, stuff like that. But if you are genuinely concerned that some people, friends of yours, colleagues at work, are going to ask you what you're wearing, and that you'll feel embarrassed or ashamed to tell them that you're wearing clones, I suggest you go for the designer fragrances. Why? Because most of the people know about those. Even if you are going to wear a niche fragrance and you're going to tell them the name, they are not going to know about the brand, most of them. So that's why I recommend going towards the designer fragrances. And here, if you are again interested in just smelling great and maybe receiving some compliments, I recommend the easy to wear designer fragrances, mainstream designer fragrances like Sauvage by Dior, like Invictus by Paco Rabanne. Those are the fragrances that usually are easy to wear and they garner compliments and people know about them. But if you are starting to collect fragrances, if you are that passionate about fragrances, and especially if you are starting now, you have found out that you are into fragrances, you smelled a couple of them, you love how they smell, you don't really care about compliments or the opinion of the people around you, then I highly recommend you start with the unique, the iconic designer fragrances. Why? Because if you're going to start directly with niche fragrances, there's no going back. It's going to be hard to look into the designer fragrances. And when I'm talking about iconic fragrances, I'm talking about fragrances like Fahrenheit by Dior or even Zeno by Davidoff. These are the kind of fragrances which you should start with, because Even when you're looking into niche fragrances, you won't find such good smelling perfumes, such great blends as in these iconic designer fragrances. That's why they are called iconic. Also, as a designer brand, I highly recommend the house of Guerlain, which is specialized into making perfumes. But if you are going to start collecting fragrances, if you are passionate about fragrances, don't invest too much in designer fragrances, because very soon your nose will hunger for weird scents, unique scents, scents that you will only be able to find into niche perfumery. So as soon as you start investing into niche fragrances, the better it will be for you, because it will save you money, of course, instead of owning lots of designer fragrances that at some point they will seem boring to your nose, and then you'll have to sell them, make money in order to purchase niche fragrances. And of course, if you're going to collect fragrances, I'm assuming that you are also interested about displaying the bottles. You're genuinely interested in the presentation, like I am. And I find them fascinating, and I love seeing them on the shelf. And again, in the niche perfumery, you will find the most interesting and appealing bottles. So everyone, to summarize everything that I've discussed in this video, if you are just interested into smelling great and you are not into fragrances, you're probably not looking into spending or investing too much money in here. So take a look into cheap fragrances, because you can find great smelling fragrances. But if you are interested in the opinion of other people about what fragrance you're using, for example, someone will ask you what fragrance you're wearing, and you'll be embarrassed to say that you're wearing Al Haramain or something that they've never heard about, look into designer fragrances. And last but not least, if you want to become a fragrance collector, if you are really passionate about fragrances, look into the iconic designer fragrances and then quickly move on to niche perfumery, because your nose will definitely hunger for those kind of scents, which are only brought by niche perfumery. And that was it, guys. I feel relaxed now because I had this video on my mind for a while now, and that now that it's out there, I can finally rest knowing that I've shared this important information with you guys, which hopefully will make you decide on which way will you want to take your fragrance journey. And until the next video, of course, you just keep smelling great no matter what path you are choosing.